Hey folks, BJ Lakshman here, and this is one of our surprise, I'm going to try it out Tuesday, Mythborn stuff, and if you guys like it, I'll know in the comments and we'll keep doing it. If it's okay, whatever, well, I'll probably still do it. Okay, so I thought what would be really fun is to, let me just see if I get this light correct. I thought what would be really fun is if we could spend a little time sometimes actually talking about myths and mythology. I mean, one of the things about Mythborn that I find so fascinating is how these myths and legends have influenced me writing. And what I realized when I would tell my friends was that a lot of these myths and legends from other countries don't make it into our everyday sort of mental space. I don't blame anything for that reason other than it's a big world. People are focused very much on the things they need to do every day. And unless you travel a lot, which is one reason why I advocate all kids either between, junior high and high school, or between high school and college, or between college and grad school, go and travel. Like take a year or two and travel. Because the amount you learn going to other countries, the amount you see, just it'll astound you. I was lucky. I traveled a lot as a kid. I grew up in Bangkok, Thailand, and then moved to Wisconsin. And then, funny story, I'd never seen snow or ice, and I just assumed that that Americans were incredible warriors because everyone walked around, in my opinion, they came to school with and then walked around with blades on their feet. I didn't know those were ice skates, so there you go. But travel is the best way to learn about the world, and the best way to bring the world and what other people think and do every day into focus. So anyways, I thought I'd go through some of these old myths, and I was inspired yesterday because a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Albert Lin, who is actually the National Geographic Explorer of the Year, or Adventure of the Year, 2016, I think. He found Genghis Khan's tomb in Mongolia, and I'll go into how he did that before. It was very cool the way he did it. He was involved in looking for the lost flight MH370. So he's definitely a bona fide adventurer. He was leaving for Egypt yesterday because he was going to go look at some evidence of a new tribe that they had found that may in fact have remnants or archaeological evidence of the Exodus. So he was, he and I'm a armchair archaeologist, historian, biblical archaeologist type of person. I've always been fascinated by what must have happened, and I do believe at some level there was something real that happened back then that created this kind of overall belief in, is that better? No. This overall belief that, there's, that it kept people thinking about God and about other things. So, I tend to believe that there's a scientific reason or an event or a cataclysm or something that got put into human memory. So, that got me sort of mind spinning, and I thought today's conversation could be a little bit about the inspiration of Mythborn and why I chose Egypt. So, or for so much of the various kinds of the gods and things like that. So, if you read the very first chapter of Mythborn, the king says on this 23rd day, I think, of Periat, and that's the first clue. If you look at the ancient Egyptian calendars, Periat is September, or the equivalent of September, I believe. And these dates and times are based on an ancient calendar that I derived from reading about how the Egyptians used astrology to sort of mark so many things. One of the things that's amazing to me that people don't realize in this day and age is in the older days, knowledge of the sky, of the stars, of what house each constellation was in, what house the Earth was currently in. It was a big deal, a big deal. Kings couldn't do things on certain days without an auspicious star. You couldn't move forward with certain things like a marriage or crops without auspicious signs that were designated by the sky. And if you think about it, in a world where you may not have anything mechanical, or you don't have clocks or watches, and you look up and there's not city lights in general to block your view of the Milky Way, I've been out in the middle of the desert in India looking up. What a sight it is. You can't picture how big the sky is until you've been in a place, and I know many of you probably have if you've been camping or whatever, but been in a place where truly there's no light pollution. The sky is enormous. The stars are, it's a beautiful tapestry that's up there. And so if you get the chance, I recommend going out somewhere and having a look at the sky. It'll give you a sense of like how important watching the sky was to early man. So here's the part I wanted to tell you guys that was really interesting. I don't plan on droning on about this. This is still sort of a test in progress, but I do want to give you a little bit of insight into just the coolness of mythology and things like that. For those of you who don't know, in college I also studied myth and mythology, Arthurian legends. I studied Tolkien. I studied C.S. Lewis. I spent a lot of time on that. I obviously grew up with the Indian mythologies, the Mahabharata, Ayodhya, the stories of Rama and Krishna. I grew up with the comic books that are so popular in India that display all this stuff as as comics. Every kid does, right? Everyone does. I think I'm gonna get the chicken, something like that. I can't always say the word, but I used to just devour those comics. I have stacks of them, right? So here's what's really cool. So how many of you guys have ever heard of the Sumerian Kings List? So the Kings List it's actually a list that talks about the elder kings that sort of ruled Sumeria. I'm just sort of making sure I get my dates right and stuff. And it goes back some, hundreds, maybe even thousands of years before Egypt. It has a list of kings and their reigning dates and who they were and what they ruled and which city-states they ruled. You have to remember that Sumer was broken into city-states, and each city-state had a name and it had a king for that city-state, and then it had a kind of deity god that was its patron god, and they kept very, very detailed records. Now, normal archaeologists they tend to dismiss the King's List as mythology, but here's the funny thing: the King's List, it just has the name of the person and the dates they ruled, and maybe a note or two, but it's not like there's these giant mythological stories around them. It looks to be like a list, like you would have a list in an encyclopedia or something, or any other sort of area of records. It doesn't read like mythology, at least in the translated versions that I've read. I haven't read the actual Sumerian, the cuneiform, but I'm starting to think that I ought to learn that, because it seems that there's probably some really interesting stuff there. In any case, that list is old. It's old. It talks about a time. Remember, the Sumerian, people existed some 3,500 years before Egypt, right? So this is old. This is Egypt is 5,000 years ago. So this is this is the old kingdom before Egypt had risen. At the time before, it says the time before, the time of the first men. And these Kings Lists span back thousands of years. And what's hard about the Kings List, and I think the reason why archaeologists say they are mythologies, because some of these kings rule for like 30,000 years or 35,000 years or things like that. But here's the funny thing. There is some evidence that the number they're using for the number of years they ruled is more allegorical, in the sense that the big numbers to denote sort of how good the rule was, not necessarily the length of time. And the second thing was, you do have to take into account that they used a base 60 math in their thing. That's where we got our calendar from. It's 12 months. That's where we got our 60 minutes and 60 seconds. In 24 hours in a day. You could use any unit of time. Why don't we have 100 hours in a day with each hour being a little bit smaller? Or why don't we have something easily divisible by 10, right? We don't. We have things that are divisible by 12, right? So that's all from Sumeria. All of that is from Sumeria. And it's based on, a divisive, a base 60 math, right? Or, base 12 math. And so what's really interesting and cool is there may be other ways in which to interpret this kind of calendrical data and come up with more realistic years for someone's life. But here's the part that got me, and this is the part that got me when I first started writing Mythborn, and what I sort of put together in my head as this evidence of an ancient human culture, maybe predating the Sumerians and the Egyptians, maybe predating even the first men, a time where there may have been high culture, not even maybe high technology, but I'm not talking like computers. I'm saying just really well thought out global civilizations. They could still have been Stone Age civilizations, but they understood how to transport megalithic rock weighing hundreds of tons. They understood how to build things like the pyramids. There's a lot of evidence that the Egyptians got there, and the three pyramids were already there. And I know I'm skipping around a little bit, but why is there evidence of that? Well, if you look at the dating of the pyramids as they go, the pyramids that are oldest in Egypt are the nicest. They're the ones that have the tightest joints. They're still standing. They have the most smooth engineering, smooth stones. And then as time progresses, these pyramids get worse, not better. When do you see that, right? You only see that when someone loses technology, or they lose their ability to do things, if knowledge is being forgotten, or if a society that had the knowledge dies out because of a cataclysm, and the people that are left can't interpret these old notes and these books. They can't interpret the math. They don't understand how that stuff was done, but they try to copy it still. They just don't do well at it. And then as those people die off, each succeeding generation gets worse. Well, that's what you see in Egypt. Each succeeding generation of these pyramids get worse in terms of their architectural prowess, their design capability. So I thought, and so there was something that happened that made me think of this potentially ancient civilization. And here's what it is. There's evidence that's been uncovered in the King's List, and it was uncovered by a number of scholars in India of two kings. One, his name is Warad, and the other one, his name is Rim-Sin. Now, here's the interesting thing. Warad, in Sumerian cuneiform, translated, actually is Barath. And Rim-Sin, translated, the cuneiform for Rim, the symbol for Rim, is Ram. And Sin refers to the moon Chandra. And Ram Chandra is the name of Lord Rama in India. Now, maybe there's many Lord Ramas, but Rama and Bharat, they're brothers, and they're part of this Indian mythology. But they're named on the King's List as being in charge of an area called Elam. And Elam is potentially modern-day northern Indo-Iran, the northern part of India and Iran. So here's a Lord Rama and a Lord Bharat who are ruling the northern part of India, named in the Sumerian King's List. And here's the part that is a kicker for me. Rama's reign in this is reigned at 60 years. And in the Jakata statement of the Dasarata Jakata, which is a Indian text, not a Sumerian text, it says he ruled for years 60 times, and then times 100, then 10,000 more, all told, reigned strong-armed Rama. which means he reigned for 60 years, but his reign was so great it felt like, But the point is, they came up with the number 60 also. And it was a separate document not tied to Sumeria. So here we have a document in India that says Lord Rama ruled for 60 years. And here we have a document that supposedly is mythology in Sumeria, in the King's List, saying that a Ram Sin ruled in Indo-Iran for 60 years. And Ram Sin translates to Ramachandra, which is Rama, Lord Rama. And so if Rama is in the King's List of the Sumerians, then, first of all, maybe that King's List, it goes back far longer than Rama. I mean, thousands of years longer than Rama. So there's possibility that there's there's evidence of ancient people that were part of a global civilization back then. And so, when you look at the Rama city, Ayodhya is actually, by the Assyriologists, that may be the capital, the city Agade, which is the capital of Sargon. Now, it hasn't been found yet, but if Ayodhya is Agada being the Sumerian name, Ayodhya being the Indian name, and Rama is in charge of that city-state, I mean, that's cool. That's a tie-in between two ancient cultures that are independent of each other, but they're verifying each other. So when I first started thinking about what I wanted to write in Mythborn, this kind of stuff really got me going. I was like, what if there were an ancient predating culture to these cultures? And what if all the myths we listen to today are actually from that culture? So when you read Mythborn and you see me use the word Heracles, or you see Diana, or you see Apollo, or you see Arjuna, or Oedipus, or any of these, Zephyr, Lilith, if you see these names, I use them not in a derivative sense of retelling mythology that we have today in Mythborn, but instead a fictional story of not retelling the myth, but of telling the first myth of the first men and women, and their names, and how those names became carried down to us today. So I hope you enjoyed this. Look it up if you want. I look forward to comments, suggestions, questions. There's a lot more of these kinds of cool mysteries. What I consider to be interesting archaeology. I don't necessarily say that the academics are wrong. There are some people out there, when you watch academics and the way they do things, they say they're inherently closed-minded and difficult on any new ideas and unfair, and they blah, blah, blah. I mean, they get a lot of hate thrown at them for not listening to some of this fringe stuff. But you know what? That's their job, right? I mean, ultimately, a good idea will survive academic ridicule, right? It may not survive the person who said it. He may die before it ever is acknowledged. That's certainly happened a number of times, where good men have been ridiculed to the point where they're, penniless and driven out of the profession, and then it's only after their death that someone goes, wow, he was actually right. Continental drift does happen, or whatever the theory that he set forth that wouldn't be accepted while his peers were alive. They all have to die for science to move forward. That's just a present given to us, a nice little present given to us by those of religion and faith, because that's really did the damage to science was sort of outlawing science and burning people and hanging people and killing them for trying to discover what's going on in the world. And that's okay. Look, I mean, all of that, eventually good ideas will stand the test of time. They will make it through these different various epochs of our own growth, and we'll learn to have an open mind and look at the facts. But in the meantime, academics are actually doing a good job they protect what's known until such time as the evidence is overwhelming that something should be changed. And then I hope, we hope that they have an open mind and they change. A lot of these people are, they are grants, their livelihood, their children's livelihoods, everything are based upon them being right. So they're not about to step up and go, well, I guess I was wrong this whole time. Their funding would dry up and they'd be out of a job. And then what do they do? If they're teaching, what do they do after that? So we're going to have to, sort of cut everyone a break. But it doesn't mean, from a fictional standpoint, we can't have fun thinking, what if? That's what science fiction is about. That's what fantasy is about. What if? What if there was a first culture so ancient, so old, that all that's left of them are these stories of a flood, these stories of gods, these stories of people from the stars teaching us things, even if they aren't from the stars, even if they are just, people from an ancient culture that were more learned than the people left after a cataclysm. And those survivors were taught by somebody maybe to keep humanity alive. So, thank you for joining me today. I'm going to have a great topic on Thursday too. And once again, if you guys have something you want to hear, let me know. Signing off for Mythborn Media, VJ. Pick up Mythborn on Amazon. Text 66866 to Mythborn to 66866, and you can join our fan club. The audiobook, just an update. I had to, I don't want to go into everything I had to do, but I had to resubmit it over the weekend. It didn't pass its first push through on Audible, but it should be out this week. I'm hoping. I'll just let people know when it's out rather than promising when it'll be out. I can't control what the ACX people do, but at least they're making sure that the book is of a high quality so that you guys have a great experience with it. And look forward to that. It does really sound fantastic. Every time I sit down and listen to it, I'm like, wow, I can't believe that's something I had a part of, right? It just sounds so good. And Baltimore Comic-Con's coming up, and so I look forward to seeing you guys on Thursday. We'll have more news. Give me some comments below, like this, subscribe to us, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.